Before the Beastie Boys became one of the most recognizable names in hip-hop, they were not trying to become rap icons at all. They began in New York City in 1981, inside a noisy underground scene where punk, hardcore, downtown art culture, and early hip-hop were all colliding. The group's most famous lineup would eventually be Adam Horowitz, known as Ad Rock, Adam Yauch, known as MCA, and Michael Diamond, known as Mike D. But the story started with a very different sound and a different set of assumptions. At first, they were teenagers and young musicians drawn to the speed, attitude, and do-it-yourself energy of hardcore punk. That origin matters because it shaped everything that came later: the shouting vocals, the rebellious humor, the rock-influenced production, and the sense that the Beastie Boys were always less interested in fitting a category than in blowing one up. The earliest version of the band grew out of a hardcore punk group called the Young Aborigines. Michael Diamond played drums, Jeremy Chatan played bass, and John Barry played guitar. Kate Skellenbach later joined on drums, adding to the band's early punk identity. In mid-1981, when Chatan left, Adam Yauch entered on bass, and the band took on the name Beastie Boys. That name would eventually become famous worldwide, but at the time it belonged to a small New York band still finding its identity. Soon after, John Barry left, and Adam Horowitz joined on guitar after playing with another local group, the Young and the Useless. This shifting lineup was not just trivia, it shows how the Beastie Boys were assembled through the energy of a local scene. They were not manufactured. They were a product of clubs, friendships, experiments, and the restless movement between punk and emerging urban music. The turning point came when the group began moving away from hardcore punk and toward hip-hop. Their 1983 single Cookie Puss was a strange, comedic hip-hop track built around prank call humor and playful sampling. It was not a polished commercial rap single, but locally it caught attention because it sounded different. It captured a moment when hip-hop was still expanding and when artists were discovering how turntables, samples, jokes, and attitude could become records. For the Beastie Boys, Cookie Puss was more than a novelty. It revealed a new direction. Instead of only playing instruments in a punk format, they could use their personalities as the instrument. They could rap, shout, joke, interrupt, sample, and perform as a chaotic unit. As they committed more fully to hip-hop, Kate Skellenbach left, and the trio of Mike D, MCA, and Ad Rock became the definitive Beastie Boys lineup. Their rise was helped by timing, talent, and a major cultural connection. In 1985, the Beastie Boys toured with Madonna after she discovered them while frequenting Danceteria, one of New York's important nightlife spaces. That pairing might sound unusual. Madonna was becoming a pop superstar, while the Beastie Boys were loud, unruly, and still developing their public identity. But it made sense in the 1980s New York environment, where club culture brought together dance music, punk attitude, art world experimentation, and hip-hop innovation. Opening for Madonna exposed the Beastie Boys to massive audiences far beyond the downtown scene. It also helped frame them as a group that could cross boundaries. They were not traditional rock stars and not traditional rappers in the way many listeners understood rap at the time. They were a disruptive hybrid, and mainstream audiences were about to meet them at full volume. In 1986, the Beastie Boys released their debut album, License to Ill, and the impact was enormous. It became the first rap album to top the Billboard 200 chart, a milestone that signaled hip-hop's growing commercial power. But the album's success was not just about numbers. License to Ill fused rap delivery with rock energy in a way that reflected the band's punk origins. Loud guitar riffs, shouted hooks, party anthems, and exaggerated teenage rebellion made the record feel explosive and accessible. For many listeners, especially outside hip-hop's original centers, this album was one of their first major introductions to rap music. At the same time, its frat boy image and comic aggression would later become something the group had to outgrow. The album made them famous, but it also trapped them inside a persona that was louder, cruder, and more limited than the artists they would become. After a blockbuster debut, the Beastie Boys made one of the strangest and boldest second album moves in popular music. Their 1989 album Paul's Boutique, created with the Dust Brothers, was built almost entirely from samples. Instead of repeating the simple, hard-partying formula of License to Ill, the group made a dense collage of funk, rock, soul, spoken fragments, obscure records, and layered references. Commercially, it disappointed at first. Many fans expected more obvious anthems and did not know what to do with such an intricate record. But over time, Paul's Boutique became a cult and critical landmark. It showed that sampling could be more than decoration, it could be architecture. The album rewarded close listening, with jokes, sounds, and lyrical fragments stacked like a city of music history. Its initial failure became part of its legend, because history eventually caught up with what the Beastie Boys had built. The early 1990s brought another reinvention. With Check Your Head in 1992, the Beastie Boys reintroduced live instrumentation into their music, reconnecting with their punk and rock roots while staying firmly inside hip-hop. This was not a retreat from rap, it was an expansion of what rap albums could sound like. The group played instruments, worked with grooves, embraced rough textures, and created a looser studio atmosphere. Check Your Head helped reposition them as serious artists rather than a novelty act from the previous decade. Then Ill Communication in 1994 pushed that approach even further, achieving mainstream success while blending rap, funk, punk, jazz influences, and experimental production. These albums mattered because they made the Beastie Boys feel like a living band again. They were no longer simply the rowdy kids of License to Ill or the sample scientists of Paul's Boutique. They had become genre-mixing veterans. One reason the Beastie Boys endured was that each member developed a distinct role without losing the chemistry of the trio. Mike D often brought a sharp, playful presence and rhythmic energy. Ad Rock delivered a nasal, cutting vocal style that could sound sarcastic, urgent, or wildly animated. MCA grounded the group with a deeper voice and a growing seriousness that became more visible over time. Their voices bounced off each other like instruments, trading lines instead of relying on a single frontman. That call-and-response approach connected back to early hip-hop performance but also reflected punk band dynamics, where the force came from collective impact. Adam Yauch also became important behind the camera, directing many Beastie Boys music videos under the alias Nathaniel Hornblower. The visual identity of the group, funny, surreal, stylish, and self-aware, became inseparable from the music. By 1998, the Beastie Boys were not just survivors of the 1980s, they were still shaping popular music. Hello Nasty continued their run of success and showed that they could adapt to changing sounds while keeping their personality intact. Later albums extended the story in different directions. To the Five Boroughs, released in 2004, connected them back to New York City, the place that had shaped their entire artistic identity. The Mix-Up, released in 2007, was entirely instrumental, a reminder that the Beastie Boys were musicians as well as rappers. Then came Hot Sauce Committee Part 2 in 2011, which became their final studio album. Across these later projects, the group proved that longevity did not have to mean repeating old formulas. Their catalog became a record of constant movement, punk to rap. Samples to instruments, comedy to maturity, local identity to global influence. The final chapter of the Beastie Boys' active career was shaped by Adam Yauch's health. Their last live performance took place at the 2009 Bonnaroo Music Festival. After that, the group stopped performing because Yauch was diagnosed with parotid cancer. For a band built on movement, live energy, and decades of shared chemistry, the halt was profound. Yauch was not just one voice in the group, he was a creative force, a bassist, a rapper, a video director, and a guiding presence. His illness changed the future of the Beastie Boys in a way no artistic reinvention could solve. The group had survived changing tastes, commercial disappointment, and shifting identities, but this was different. It placed a human limit on a story that had often felt powered by endless energy. In 2012, the Beastie Boys were inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, becoming the third rap group to receive that honor. The induction recognized more than hit records. It acknowledged how much they had done to blur the boundaries between rock, punk, and hip-hop, and how deeply their approach influenced later artists. But the celebration was followed by loss. Later that year, Adam Yauch died, and the Beastie Boys disbanded. Mike D and Ad Rock did not continue the group without him, a decision that reflected the balance at the heart of their music. The Beastie Boys were not a brand that could simply replace a member. They were the chemistry between three specific people. Without MCA, the structure no longer stood in the same way. The Beastie Boys' legacy continues through their records and through retrospective works like the Beastie Boys book, a documentary, and compilation releases. Their story remains compelling because it resists a simple label. They were a hardcore punk band that became a hip-hop group, a novelty act that became critically respected, sample experimenters who returned to live instruments, and jokers who matured without abandoning humor. They made mistakes, changed direction, and kept rethinking what their music could be. In doing so, they helped widen the possibilities of hip-hop and showed how genre boundaries could be crossed without losing personality. From New York clubs to the top of the charts, from chaotic comedy to lasting influence, the Beastie Boys became proof that reinvention can be more than a career strategy. For them, it was the whole point. If you found this helpful, please like this video and subscribe for more explainers.